So this webinar, the subjects of the webinar are going to be rebate/spiffs and how to automatically create consignment payables. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and give a brief demo of these options, and we're also going to look at the accounting side of it as well, because even though these are finance features, there's an accounting backend. Like, you know, a lot of the parts of the finance module, there's a tie-in with the accounting system. So I'm going to be touching on that, but you don't have to be using our accounting module for this to be helpful for you. But this is mostly an accounting function. So if you're not using the accounting, you know, it's probably not going to be, you'll see as we go through, it's not going to be, it's really kind of focused on sort of an accounting backend. Okay, so I'm just going to open up a test deal in the system and talk about where you would go. Okay, this is a sold unit, so that might be, it's probably not an issue. So if we go to the quote tab, there's going to be a new sub tab here. You know, there's a row of sub tabs. This is where your aftermarkets, your fees are, as well as deposits, right? So there's a tab here called Rebates/Spiffs. And you should have this in your system currently. You probably don't need an update because we've had this as a part of the software for a good while now. It's relatively new, but it's been in there for probably over a year. So, you know, if you don't see Rebates/Spiffs, it's probably a security access thing. There are a couple of security permissions that need to be enabled for you to be able to see this. And what we basically have here is we have spiff information where you can put in an employee, like a salesperson employee at the top here. You can put in your pay to entity number. You can put in your spiff amount. And, you know, basically this section here works about the same way as the old rebate/incentive and the factory discount section works. Okay, so you might be familiar, you know, if you put a dollar amount here under the rebate, that's a dealer rebate. So that's going to hit cost of sale and create an accounts payable entry. And then if you put something into factory discount, you know, you put a dollar amount in here in factory discount, and it basically creates a credit to revenue and a debit to your accounts receivable to show that the factory owes you that money. So that's how these work, and it's been working fine. But you know, what's been requested is instead of having that stuff, you know, go into accounting the same way every single time, this rebates incentives, this Rebates/Spiffs tab allows you to get a little bit more control over it and how that stuff is going to post to accounting. And it's especially helpful because a lot of times if you have something specific going on with a factory discount, you would have to actually open up the accounting transaction and correct it every single time you posted this thing to accounting. So the benefit is you can actually set it up under Rebates and Spiffs. You can actually use this grid at the bottom to configure your rebates for accounting purposes. And then all you have to do is click the post to accounting button and it'll automatically shoot it over there every time. All right, so in order to do a proper demo of this, I need to find a deal that has actually been sent to accounting. All right, so we're gonna do that now. And we'll have a good deal that'll work as a good example. So again, quote tab, Rebates/Spiffs. And it looks like this one already has a rebate entered in here. So you can see I have a salesperson, I have a pay to. Again, this is not what's going to post to accounting up here. This is really just information for you. That's why it says spiff information, is that you're basically putting in, you know, who's getting the spiff. Down here at the bottom, in this grid, this is actually the part of the software that's going to be used for creating the accounting transactions. And what it does is it allows you to separate out whether or not it's a spiff or a rebate. And it allows you to create your revenue account and AR account for each one of these dollar amounts and kind of split it up. The other thing you can do is choose the entity number. in here and then choose whether or not you're going to use the stock number or the deal number on these individual lines. So again, it allows you to divide this up and actually have multiple accounts receivable lines that go into the deal rather than just having one that goes in here. And then what this does is if you do have multiple factory rebates, then you can basically divide them up. And this kind of allows you to organize that. So the point is, once you get it set here in the deal, I can click the Save button. Then I have my, my rebate configuration entity numbers. These entity numbers normally would be your manufacturer's entity numbers. So, you know, we can have 2 different entity numbers, 2 different ARGL accounts, 2 different revenue accounts potentially if you want to show your different rebates coming from different revenue accounts recognized on your profit and loss. That's possible here. So anyway, you just get this looking the way it should, and then all I have to do is click that one Post to Accounting button, and I don't actually have to do this little customization on the resultant accounting transaction. You know, it should just go in the way I've configured it on the deal. So here we have the accounting transaction that was created, and over here, it's going to label it as a spiff or a rebate, depending on how I've configured it. And then here's my dollar amount. So here we have the correct entity number that's been selected. We have the sales account that was selected on the grid. Unit deposit receivables is the receivable account on the grid. And the same thing for this $300 one that I labeled it as a spiff. I used a different entity number for the manufacturer, and the unit deposit receivables, 1110 was used. New vehicle sales was used as well. So what was happening is I think some of our dealerships were having to do all this by hand every single time you sent a deal to accounting, which is a lot to remember. So rather than, you know, requiring you to do that, we've added this advanced tab up here. So again, if you're not using our accounting system, it's probably fine that you just put your incentives and discounts over here. Like your factory discount could just be $1 amount. But again, that's what this does. It allows you to split it out to multiple manufacturers, and you can have as many as you want on that grid. All right, so that's pretty much that in a nutshell. Hopefully I've been able to show how that works and how it's useful. Does anybody have any questions on that? If you do, I don't see any questions popping up here, but you can click on Q&A or you can click on chat. I'm watching the chat window, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have about that rebates and spiffs. All right, so we'll give it just a couple of moments for anyone to type in questions so that we can answer them without moving on. All right, I do have a question now. Let's see here. Does the spiff show up on the front end profit when the deal is washed? No, it doesn't. Yeah, so what's happening, you probably see this too, is you know, when I put these dollar amounts in here, it's not affecting your gross profit. So actually, you know what, let me delete one of these out and verify that that's true. Yeah, you see it doesn't affect it. So so no, it doesn't affect that gross profit. And if I were to look on my S profit tab, actually, you know what, actually I believe it does. Hold on, I gotta actually test this out to see for sure. So if I put $300 in here and look at my S profit tab, yeah, no, it doesn't show up in the same place. It's really just for, it'll show up as profit on accounting, but it won't show up on this S profit tab. Yeah, so these, it will show up in profit if we go over here and put it into the actual factory discount field. See, if I put in my $300 here, it's immediately reflected as a part of your gross profit. So that is built in up here, but that's a good question. No, the rebates that you have down here don't actually show up as a part of that. Yeah, that factory discount is going to be where that shows up as profit correctly. All right. Yeah, that was a good question. You know, I hadn't even thought about that. That might be something we should look into maybe incorporating. All right, so that question is answered. I don't see any other questions typed in. Don't worry if you have questions. Go ahead and type them in. I'm going to circle back at the end of this whole training, and we'll talk about any questions anyone has. So go ahead and put it in the Q&A section, and I'll get to it. But right now, I am going to move on to the automatically create consignment payable. Right, so this is a feature that we've had in the software for at least a year. And really is kind of a cool feature. Consignment units basically work differently than any unit that you have in stock. So what I'm going to do is look at a consignment unit and just talk about the correct way to run through that process. If you're not familiar, it's kind of a good thing to kind of brush up on from time to time. And then I'll talk about what this new feature does and how it can kind of save you a little bit of time. So when we add a consignment unit, basically it's just like a normal unit. You're going to add it to inventory the way it should be added, with its make and its model, you know, and its type and everything like that. The big difference with a consignment unit is that you don't technically own it. It shouldn't be on your books as an asset because someone else, you know, owns the unit. So you're not going to create any accounting transactions at this point, even if it's actually on the lot, ready to be sold. If we go to the financial tab, we want to check that consignment checkbox. And by checking that, it allows a couple of things to change on the unit. So if we click off of that, you'll notice that instead of having the floor plan account, it now says consign account. So right now, what it's looking for is your consignment payable account. This is the account that's going to be used when you go to create, when you go to sell the unit. We're going to create an accounts payable for the consignment amount. So by setting up this unit, we're basically going to say, okay, we want to put accounts payable in here as my consignment account. So I'm going to do that now. 2100 is our generic accounts payable account. And let's say the consigned amount was $10,000. We'll put that in as floor plan balance, and we'll put it in as purchase price. But the important thing about a consignment is that you do not want to click on create accounting transactions, because you don't want this actually hitting your hitting your books. So because it's a consignment unit, I want to change my floor plan company to actually be the consignor's entity number. You know, so you know, essentially the consignment person needs to be added as an entity in the system, and that's kind of outside the scope of this training. But you want to make sure that they actually have their own entity number. This is the person whose unit you're going to consign, and you would load them up as the AP company. So that's going to be your owner of the unit up here, and then you have AP down here as your consignment account. That's how you set this up for accounting. You don't actually want to click create accounting transactions, just kind of leave it in this state. You can set your selling price however you want, of course, but purchase price, floor plan balance, that's going to be your consignment amount. Now there's also a consignment tab, right? So consignment tab gives you access to that consignment checkbox again, and then it allows you to fill out the consignment amount, whatever it was that you agreed upon. And you can put in the purchased from entity number. That can be the consignor's entity number again, and it's going to load up their name and their contact information. So that's another thing that you can do. This is really just for informational purposes. You know, you still, after you've filled out the consignments tab, you still want to go to the financial tab and make sure you put in that entity number and accounts payable. So that's it in a nutshell. When it comes to the service department doing work to prep this unit, even though you've assigned it a stock number, any kind of prep work that's done on a consignment unit should be done as customer pay work, because you don't want to charge this customer your internal billing rate. You want to charge them your full retail rate. The difference is you're going to put all that work on account. Okay, so what I'm going to do is bring up a customer pay invoice. I'm going to load my stock number on it, but I'm going to make sure that I'm billing as customer pay, and then we're going to cash that out under Mr. Gregory Anderson's account, and we're going to actually put it on his AR account. So what that means is you're going to have to allow him a credit limit over there in the CRM module. When you go to create your entity, just make sure to allow them a credit limit that allows them to cash out on account. The whole point is, we don't want to charge an internal rate to a consignment customer, because usually you're billing lower rates internally than you are to your customers. It's not really internal work, it's customer pay work. They're just not going to pay you right away. They're probably going to pay you later on when the unit actually sells. So that's an important part of the process, is that you give them a credit limit, unless you're going to bill them up front for the PDI work, which does happen in a lot of the cases. If you're a dealership that the consignment unit, you're going to bill them for any kind of PDI work up front, then you don't have to allow them a credit limit. You basically just, you just take the cash payment in the service department. They pay for the work up front. There's no need to allow a credit limit in that case. But yeah, if you're going to be reducing the $10,000 payment by the amount of the internal work, then you're going to want to allow them a credit limit and go ahead and bill them at your customer pay rate. All right, so that's how you set up a consignment unit. It's a little bit different than, of course, a stock unit. But now that we have this stock number, 1423, I can talk you through how to automatically create those payables. So the very first thing to look at is making sure that it's configured. There's a company info setting here under finance and insurance. Right, it's right here. It says consignment create payable on posting, yes or no. So this actually has to be turned on for this to start working. So if you don't have access to company information, there's a lot of stuff in here that can cause problems if you don't know what you're doing. So just send a message to the support department and we can turn this feature on for you. The other thing is to choose which entity reference to use. Maybe you want to use the stock number for controlling all the payables in the system, or you might want to use the deal number for the payable. So depending on your preference for accounting, you would choose that, hit save, and now we're all pretty much set to go. So we're going to jump back into the finance menu, and I'm going to start a quick deal here. And we're going to load up a preset. We're going to load up a customer, and we're going to start a new deal. And this is, of course, a consignment deal. So what I'm going to do is go to my units tab, and I'm going to plug in the stock number for my consignment unit that I just set up earlier. And I'm going to update the selling price. Let's say we're using the selling price from inventory. As you can see, there is a unit cost in here so that we can calculate the deal's profitability according to that payment, that $10,000 that we agreed upon. Basically this part is just standard working the deal. But what I'm going to do now is go ahead and post it to accounting and show you what's being done. All right, so we've just washed out the deal. We get our commission report. Now I'm going to go ahead and post that to accounting using one of these presets. Ooh, looks like we have an issue here. Oh, the unit doesn't have its revenue account. Okay, that's not a problem. I can add that. All right, we're going to use a new sales account. Oh, that's it. It's invalid. That's the problem. 1423. There we go. Oh, we fixed everything in red. Sorry about that little deviation. Oh, why did it use cost of sale? That's not what I want. Well, anyway, that's not that important. So the important thing is down here at the very bottom, you can see that we have a floor plan payoff. Okay, it's the purchase price consignment. So you can see we have purchase price consignment that's actually created accounts payable here. This is what we want to see. The floor plan payoff, we should disable that setting to kind of go along with the consignment process. As you can see, it's just washing in and out of accounts payable. Actually, I'm just going to delete those off because it's kind of confusing. But basically, your purchase price is going to wash in and out of new unit inventory all in the same transaction date. So you can see we have a debit to unit inventory and a credit to unit inventory all in the same account. And then, of course, it puts the $10,000 into accounts payable as a part of the same transaction. So that's what the setting turns on for you. And it does save you a little bit of time to turn that setting on. It's a new feature. Like I said, we've had it for about a year now. It's just one checkbox in company information. And this is going to ease the posting of these to accounting. It really is an accounting feature. Like I kind of mentioned at the beginning, if you're not using our accounting system, none of this is going to be very helpful to you. It's mostly just the way things get posted to accounting can ease that process. Rather than creating a separate accounting transaction to pay the consignor, you get it immediately when you click that post to accounting button. So that does make things a little bit easier. It would not do this if you didn't have that setting turned on. Okay, so I think that sums it up pretty well. Just to kind of take the example full circle, when you're going to actually pay the consignor, the way that would work in accounting is in the check writer, you now have accounts payable to this person. So if we add a check, and actually, who was the customer's name? I think we used, let's see, Cedar Creek Daydreamer. Who is our consignor? Oh, it's Gregory Anderson. Okay, so if we're writing a check to Gregory Anderson, you can see we have our that's not the right amount. Is that the right guy? 106,771. Yeah, it is. Well, it looks like I have some kind of a problem in my setup. Yeah, this is the kind of thing we'd want to get sorted out. Yeah, actually, you know what? I think my preset is incorrect. Well, anyway, what's going to happen on the check writer is we're going to hit pay for the consignor's amount, which would be in here, that I can just basically hit pay on that amount. The difference is, you know, if they also have service work that's been done on account, I need to change my pay type to customer refund, and any kind of service work that's been cashed out is going to be in here as a negative dollar amount. So what ends up happening is you'll have your $10,000 consignor amount, and then it's going to be reduced by this $300. So the check is actually going to be for the difference of whatever you actually owe them. And that way you take care of your internal cash outs and your payable balance for consignments all in one, as part of one process. So depending on how you're handling depending on how you're handling consignments now for accounting, that's either going to be a really quick or slight change to your process, or it might be kind of a big change to your process, depending on how accurate your process is for accounting purposes. So, any questions on anything we've covered so far? Anything? Any questions on the consignment process or the rebates that we talked about earlier? All right, so just to kind of sum up, if you do have further questions, I know I went into a lot of detail here to kind of show how it works. Implementing this is going to be pretty simple. You really just have to send a message to our support department to have us turn that feature on for you. It's just one checkbox to turn on. And then we'll kind of run through some tests with you to make sure that it's functioning okay when you create your accounting transaction. All right, so any questions going forward? If you do have any further questions, oh, Lisa Larkin. Lisa, I remember I came out there and trained once with you in person. So Lisa's actually telling me because I did this wrong, I have to change it to floor plan and then I'm going to see it, right? Yeah, you're right. You're right. So if I change this to floor plan, this is where it shows up in the check writer. Don't know why it does that, but yeah, there it is. Here's my $10,000. I appreciate that, Lisa. And switch it back to standard. We have some AP in there. I could have sworn it was a standard AP the way it went through. Anyway, that's on my check is going to be $9,700, $10,000 payable, $300 as my AR, and then that's the completion of that example. Yep. Appreciate that assistance, Lisa. I really do. All right. I think that's it. We've got a good example now that you've seen it go full circle. Any questions, feel free to forward them to support at motilitysoftware.com, and they're happy to help you out with this. They've all pretty much been briefed on how this works. And if you have any really complicated questions, they'll probably come see one of our trainers in the training department. But either way, send your questions to support. And yeah, thanks for your time. I haven't had any other questions, so we're going to go ahead and end the webinar now. Thanks for your patience, and hope you all have a great rest of the day.